First, our apologies for the abrupt ending of our stream last week. It was the result of a piece of equipment on my end. A new piece was installed late last week, and it has been performing without issue.
On another note, join tonight's conversation. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Now let's dive in.
The United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people. Its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas, and our allies throughout the world. To the members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, the armed forces, and all of the police, I say tonight that you must lay down your weapons and have complete immunity, or, in the alternative, face certain death. So, lay down your arms, you will be treated fairly with total immunity, or you will face certain death. Finally, to the great, proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations.
That was U.S. President Donald Trump in a pre-recorded video announcing the beginning of the combined American-Israeli offensive against Iran. It was posted on his Truth Social account in the early morning hours last Saturday. Later, he posted this update.
We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now, it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead. This wretched and vile man had the blood of hundreds and even thousands of Americans on his hands and was responsible for the slaughter of countless thousands of innocent people all across many countries. The entire military command is gone as well, and many of them want to surrender into saving their lives. They want immunity. They're calling by the thousands. Earlier today, CENTCOM shared the news that 3 U.S. military service members have been killed in action. As one nation, we grieve for the true American patriots who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation, even as we continue the righteous mission for which they gave their lives. We pray for the full recovery of the wounded and send our immense love and eternal gratitude to the families of the fallen. And sadly, there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is. Likely be more, but we'll do everything possible where that won't be the case.
So that launch of heavy airstrikes against Iran and the resulting escalation in the Middle East raises questions about executive authority in wartime decisions and Canada's potential role if formally asked to assist. So tonight we are joined by Christian. Eddie, he's here in Montreal and ready to jump into the discussion as well. Christian?
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on board and have you here in person as well. So,
hey, Christian.
So here we go with the whole situation here. And that is, first of all, once again, Donald Trump is launching military action, and he has not sought any sort of congressional approval. He has not really been forthcoming to a large degree with the American public this is all done without any consultation whatsoever. And yes, I understand that some strikes you can't discuss openly or publicly for sure. But there's a real issue growing in the United States in the fact that he is overstepping his bounds and his authority as president, and the elected representatives are losing control. And even there was a briefing today, I believe it was, or late yesterday, where they had some congressional leaders in, and a lot of them walked out and said, we didn't get a whole lot of answers to our questions. And if you've been listening closely over the last 2 to 3 days, it seems the administration is working to try and come up with solid objectives that will stick with the American public as to this mission. And I've watched the message has changed 2 or 3 times. Yesterday was Trump in the White House, and Rubio right after that, outside somewhere or in another building, and the messaging was different. There's no consistent messaging coming out of here. Eddie, your thoughts?
Well, on the last point, I'll start there in terms of what seems to be chaos within Trump's senior administration and people directly reporting to him. It certainly doesn't seem like the left hand knows what the right hand is saying or thinking or doing at any particular moment. And you would think at a very critical time like this, not just for the United States, but for the world, that the aggressors would have had some sort of a common plan as to why they're doing it, how we're doing this, and what is essentially the plan, what is the message. And I think that goes to a lot of the comments coming from both the Republican side of the House and the Democrat side of the House, and other leaders of the world asking that very, very same question, Gary. What is the plan? What is the end game? And they continue asking that same question over and over the last 48 hours plus, because they just don't know. And I think this is essentially just the mantra of El Presidente. He does what he feels like doing, changes his mind every 2 seconds to keep people off balance so he can continue doing what he needs to do to some personal objective that he's not telling anybody about. And classic example of what you had said about Rubio, just outside and right after President Trump spoke, spoke completely differently to what Donald Trump was trying to say. And it goes right across the board from Miller to his spokespeople to Lutnick. Everyone just absolutely and completely doesn't convey the same message. Now, we're not getting this globally. I don't know who the hell he thinks in the United States understands what's going on here. And, like you had said at the beginning, the accountability factor. There seems to be zero accountability factor. And you can tell from that just because of the very, very different words coming out from his people's mouths. I don't know what to make of this, Gary. I mean, of course, we're going to get into as part of the show, his potential reasoning for this, which we can all take a wild guess. But in terms of the communication, I don't think his people know what to communicate, or if they even know what the plan is, Gary. And if they don't know what the plan is, what are the generals working under? What's the order that the military is getting? I'd love to hear that from the top general.
Christian,
I don't know what to say.
Well, Trump changes his mind every couple of years. I mean, 2-3 years ago, I remember he promised the world that he will end all wars, not even provoke a war. And see what he did in the last couple of days, like, as you said, a very volatile character.
I saw a chart yesterday, and I tried to bring it in for tonight, but it just didn't fit in. It wouldn't show up on the screen. But it showed a number of presidents over the last number of years and their use of military and where they used the military. And believe it or not, between his first term and now 1 year into his second term, Trump has used military action, including blowing the drug cartel boats, the alleged drug cartel boats, out of the water, and both in the Pacific and the Atlantic. He has used military action far more than any of the other presidents that they cited, and it went back. It went back quite a ways. There were a lot of former presidents listed. I was shocked. I was shocked by how far out he is. And again, all of this happening with questions being raised by the elected representatives, the congressional representatives, asking, why are we not being kept informed? Now, I remember during the last, I think it was when they did, they obliterated, if you recall, they obliterated Iran's nuclear capabilities in the June attacks. And he said, well, you know, we just couldn't go to Congress or the congressional leaders because of security. We didn't want it leaking out. Well, and then the other question comes up is, if you obliterated their nuclear capabilities back in June, then they must have one crack team, because they're now, the Americans and Israelis both are now talking about the fact that they were getting very close again to being in the position to build a bomb.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a little over 6 months.
Yeah.
So did they really obliterate? Because you recall at the time, there were a lot of questions about how accurate and how destructive those strikes were.
Yeah. You know, Gary, yeah, he said it was complete. That first of all, first point I want to make is about the obliteration. Whether his agencies, whether his intelligence agencies told him that, yes, Mr. President, you have obliterated. No, Mr. President, you have not obliterated. He needed to justify the attack to the American people and his followers to keep them on board, to basically look like the hero in saying they've been completely annihilated and obliterated, okay, to quell the masses. I personally didn't believe that was accomplished. I personally didn't believe that if Iran was pushing on a nuclear bomb program, developing one, that they'd keep all their eggs in one basket. The Americans don't keep their eggs in one basket. Why would you think your enemy would be keeping all their eggs in one basket? Okay, they probably have it spread out completely. So no, he didn't. He didn't accomplish his task because of the fact he's saying, well, now we're going to be continuing our attacks because of the nuclear program. Well, what the hell happened 6 months ago? And I think the frustrating part for the world is, well, why don't you explain this? Maybe admit that you didn't do a good job the first time. You're going in to finish the job the second time around. I don't know. Just something. And it's just this continuous circle of misdirection, misinformation, and absolute lies. And, you know, quite frankly, Gary, you know, when you mentioned he was worried about informing Congress and letting the cat out of the bag and the enemy is going to find out. Well, he does not sit in the House with his representatives on the left and the other ones on the right and vice versa, and just profess to them, by the way, I'm asking for permission to start a war. It doesn't happen that way. They have a high-level security committee that he would sit down to talk to as representatives that have the highest clearance level in the country. If he was informing them of this, it would not be leaked out. Because if it got leaked out, then he's got a problem with his own internal security, which, as we know, from the CIA perspective and the FBI perspective, both of those agencies have been completely decimated by his Fox News hosts that are running, or they're the people that go online and they're specialists in social media who are running these agencies just continue gutting them. So Gary, you know what? That's just in all cases he's just spinning lies to distract the real issues in the United States and keep people on board in believing in what he's saying and doing, which is about 28 to 29% of the population. And by the same token, at least give fodder to the Republicans that are in power in Congress and Senate to be able to spin the lies even further. So it's just more lies, more lies, more lies, Gary, misdirection. And, it's just absolute crap that he couldn't tell Congress and ask for permission. And it goes back to something my wife once read not too long ago, that the reason the government fails today and previous presidents were kept in line, this one just says no. No to the law, no to policy, no to the Constitution, no to 250 plus years of the way America has functioned. He just says no. And here's the problem. No one's doing anything about it. Oh, no, Mr. President. Okay, no problem. And I think that's part of the problem, which goes into what you and I talked about at the beginning of his second term. Level of accountability, and is he being completely influenced, and is he compromised by other major superpowers on this planet? And most educated pundits, and we're talking about people who, political scientists globally, have come out and said on numerous occasions that he is a very, very compromised president. So he's got to just spin his lies.
Well, here's something. The Prime Minister so far has ruled this out. However, at some point down the road, who knows, especially if Iran keeps lobbing missiles at Turkey, which happens to be a member of NATO.
Mm-hmm.
Would you support Canada sending troops and getting involved in that conflict? Let's start with a Christian.
Yeah.
I mean, as I cannot take position for Canada, but I can talk about Europe maybe a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you know, there's three big powers: is France, Germany, and the UK, and all of them, they take different positions. Germany, on one hand side, is backing the Israelis and the Americans. They're in. UK is not joining the war, but also not condemning it either. And France has offered subtle criticism. So you see, like there's not really a consensus here in Europe. UK was, as we all know, did not allow even the US Americans to use their air bases just to land their aircraft for stopover, but they backing a little bit back on that. What we saw in Spain, though, is really they're pushing back hard on the USA. No to war, yeah. But this has also like in a political conflict in Spain, because we all know the Spanish, they hate Trump. So no matter in which direction, like the current prime minister is going, it would backlash in both directions, and he chose for the Spanish people and offended basically Trump and saying you cannot even land in our country. Yeah, Trump took it really. Took a big offense on that and said, like, if you will be not the one who is telling us where we land. If you say no, we will still take the options to land in your country. So stop that. And what he also said, like, is he will push now for big sanctions on Spain, not sanctions, but a full embargo on all trade deals, trade between the US and Spain. So like Europe itself is not really aligned. Germany with one of the people like who are saying like we're going in with you. giving the U.S. American support. Was also interesting what the commissioner of the NATO said today, Rutte. He said, like, we're all he's sitting together with all the European leaders, and he is supporting the decisions of the USA. He wants that this regime is ended in order to stabilize the region, especially, and everyone is mentioning also Israel. No one wants to let Israel run into like we are in war, but they want to defend Israel. And of course, like with our history from Germany, we're standing more than behind Israel, and that's why we have a firm side on in that war.
So here's the question. Would Canada require parliamentary debate before supporting U.S. action? And the answer is no, not at all. The Prime Minister does have full legal authority to commit or refuse to commit Canadian troops and tactical support without first seeking the approval of Parliament. And while modern political custom often involves a take-note debate or a non-binding vote in the House of Commons for major combat missions, these are matters of political strategy rather than legal necessity. So as a result, the power to deploy the Canadian Armed Forces, declare war, and conduct foreign policy is a royal prerogative. That falls into executive control. In practice, the power is exercised by the Crown and Council, essentially the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. No legislative requirement, no statute in Canadian law that requires the Prime Minister to obtain a majority vote in the House of Commons or the Senate before deploying troops or declining a request for support. In the National Defense Act, this act provides the legal framework for the military, but it does not strip the executive of its prerogative to decide where and when the Canadian Armed Forces would be deployed. Eddie, would you support Carney giving the go-ahead?
You know what? I completely understand and feel for the plight of the citizens of Iran and the heavy hand that they were being governed by. Okay, maybe not a functional society to us, but for whatever reason, a functional society to that government, and in a lot of cases, a lot of the people there. The Ayatollah had his followers. President Trump's got his followers. Okay, now. In terms of the war itself, because I believe this particular attack, and let's call it for what it is, it's an attack on a sovereign nation for the second time in 6 months, is illegal. That is my opinion, okay, according to world law. And because of that, I would not support Prime Minister Carney in committing our troops and our young men and women who have upped to join the Canadian military to defend Canada, to defend Canadians, to go on a mission on behalf of the United States or at their request to fight a battle that I personally do not believe should have started in the first place. Okay? I don't think the diplomatic chains or the diplomatic opportunity was taken right to the end. I don't find that this is a legal war. It's illegal, it's an illegal attack, and it was perpetuated by two individuals that I find don't really understand the nature of true human rights and respect for human life. I don't think either of them see that. So because of those reasons, and the fact that a United States was not under attack or under threat, neither was Canada, and potentially neither were, and Tom and Christian can speak to this, I don't think that Europe was in any imminent danger, although Israel, just because of the geographic location is always in some sort of danger, surrounded by countries that really don't want them there. So I get Israel's position on self-preservation and defense, but there is a limit to what is considered response, equal response. So no, Gary, I don't want to see our troops engaged in a war on behalf of two individuals, especially driven by the United States, which I do not believe is in defense necessarily of Israel's interests or American interests. I believe this is more of a personal war perpetuated by Donald Trump, using Israel as an excuse to do what he needs to do to keep on being dictator of the United States, which is what he's been driving to do, especially during the second term. He's turned the United States into an authoritarian government with everything we've seen going on in the last year. And I do not want our young men and women supporting an authoritarian state for whatever reasons that they have started this. Let's call it a war. I know I'm not calling it a war, but it is a war. There's missiles flying, there's bombs flying, and it just kills me in the second video telling Iranian people to stay in their homes because bombs are going to be flying. And what? Hold up an umbrella and hopefully a bomb is not going to hit their home? I mean, seriously. So no, Gary, no. I do not want Carney allowing our people to go into a hostile zone on behalf of one or two maniacs. No.
Well, I totally agree with you, Eddie. I am not in support of Canada sending any kind of a commitment to the Mideast to support this gangster action that's going on. Yes, the country was under a very, very cruel dictatorship. But now Trump's even talking about, well, perhaps somebody from the current regime could take over once we get everything straightened away. How's that going to change anything, really, when you get right down to it? All of the, they've already lost American lives. A lot of civilians have been killed. Destruction throughout the Mideast again. And there had to be other ways to handle that whole situation. I'm not buying the fact that Trump has been talking about missiles coming, the Iranians having the capability very shortly of long-range missiles to the United States. I don't buy into that argument either. And again, I question what happened in June. You were supposed to have obliterated their nuke capabilities. And they've bounced back in just a little over 6 months. Well, yeah. So anyway, no, I don't support it. The Prime Minister yesterday, when he responded to the question of sending Canadian troops, and he said no, he also brought up the fact that it would appear that this whole operation is in violation of international law.
Yeah, against the NATO Charter and the UN Charter, but still the NATO, like as said, Rutter said, like, we will support. He did not say that we will send troops, but we will support the US, or he supports the US Americans. He sees a threat in Iran, and under NATO, like they said, like, we need to go into an offensive position and get it done before they attack us. It's a totalitarian regime down there. I have myself friends living in Iran. There are Iranian families. And some of them, I mean, like I can say it now, they said, thanks God, why didn't you do it a couple of years earlier? Thank you. Yeah. They suffering under the regime. I know this has nothing to do. It's far away from our home countries. It's far away from Canada. But looking at those people from the ground who live there, who suffer under the regime, like you get two sides of the story. Yeah, they don't care if there's nuclear weapons. They see thousands of people get slaughtered every month by a dictatorship. So do we really need a reason for that? I'm not sure. Like it needs to be like you can have two positions on that side, but for a lot of people, means if it works out, freedom. We don't know what the outcome will be, but yeah, like I think now it's the time also for the European Union to take position, because as you see, Iran is throwing bombs here and there, uncoordinated. It's flying to Cyprus. We think today, like, what will happen if a France marine ship or a ship from the UK will be hit? What will be their position then? Will they still not attack, or will they attack? So it's a lot of open questions who will be discussed in the next days. So I'm glad that they're all meeting together now in Europe and see where it goes.
Yeah, and Christian, you're absolutely right. Not too long ago, Gary and I actually had a discussion about, can a conflict in the Middle East be contained to one country, and we both agreed no, that other countries will be pulled into the conflict. And what about collateral damage and collateral attacks? Other countries are what, going to be forced to respond equally in case one of their merchant ships, tankers, or military assets get blown up by either Iranian weaponry, or let's call a spade here. What about friendly fire? Our country is going to be drawn into further conflict because of friendly fire as well. So there's it. Look, I mean, over the last couple of days, it started out with three countries in combat, and now all of a sudden, you have Iran firing weapons into assets in other countries within the region. And you know what? It doesn't take a very highly educated person to see that this is exactly what Iran needed to do, is hit military assets that belong to the United States. And unfortunately, they also reside in sovereign nations. So, like you were saying, Christian, there is no right or wrong. Again, we completely understand the plight of the Iranian population, but where is the right and wrong, and where do you draw the line? And it's just it was ugly, and it's getting more uglier by the hour. And
it will get really messy now. It will get really messy.
Exactly.
It will get really messy on the Ukrainian side, on the Russian side. It will get also very messy on the European energy supply. Europe,
Mhm.
like especially Germany, France, UK, we were forced, or we were pushed to cut our energy supply, gas and oil, from Russia. Guess where
Right.
we went? We went to Saudi
Mm.
Arabia. We went to Qatar. Now what's happening there? Like it's like we're twisted. Like we now need to support, or like secure our energy supply as well. So we're also pushed in one direction. We cannot buy from Russia in order to not support them against the Ukraine. And our supply in the other region is now under attack. So it's a really, really messy game. Yeah, it's in a
Yeah.
direction we don't know where it will go in the next weeks, months.
Okay,
And you know
Eddie,
what,
we
Gary?
do have.
I'm just. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say we do have a comment. It's been here for a few minutes, so I just wanted to get it up if possible. There we go. Manel says she agrees with Eddie, lies, 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 and of course referring to U.S. President Trump, and no one to stop him. Okay, Eddie, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just kind of reflecting back to our coffee conversations, where we both agreed that this cannot be contained in a genie's bottle, a war between two nations, or in this particular case, three nations, that once that top is taken off, there's no way of getting everything back in. And it's, Christian is right. It's really bad. Personally, I didn't think it would get this bad this quickly, Gary.
Right.
So maybe the Iranian government learned from the first strike that it's going to happen again. Let's be better prepared with our retaliation plan. And you know what? They seem to be executing some kind of a plan, because many countries, nine, I think the last counted, nine individual countries got attacked by Iran. Now what? Yeah. Oh,
Yep. And Trump was talking about a 4-week war. Good luck with that one. He's
yeah,
in there now.
yeah,
And you recall the promise he made on the campaign trail: no more getting into wars that are going to drag us down for years. Well, your
yeah,
track record is not very good as far as those kinds of wars are concerned. You seem to be drawn in and you're mired for years and years, and with tremendous loss of life on both sides. So,
yeah.
one more point in relation to this. The question is message control replacing transparent war accountability? I would offer, for the most part, yes, except when you're dealing with Trump, Rubio, and Hegseth. Between Hegseth and the other two, they can't, at least in the first days of this campaign, have not been able to get their messages straight. It keeps changing. And as we said earlier, it changed within minutes from Trump in the Oval Office to Rubio outside after some kind of a hearing or a meeting that he was in elsewhere in Washington. It changed. And the administration, and a lot of people are starting to pick up on this and talk about it, the administration is struggling to come up with solid objectives to justify this action.
Yeah. And that kind of, I'm not going to say leads to conspiracy theories, because I don't think there's any conspiracy theory thought here. If the United States got attacked by Iran directly, or directly to one of its allies and declared war, okay, that's a different conversation. I get that. But it's very difficult not to look at the other key assumptions, which is prevalent not just in social media, but questions being asked by reporters, and when you're looking at mainstream media, reputable mainstream media. I'm not talking about Fox News, but reputable. You're going from, well, you know what, President Netanyahu decided I'm doing this, and Donald, you're doing it too. Do you understand? Okay, which is for a variety of reasons, right? That's number one. Number two, is it a joint discussion between the two that at the end of the day, there's going to be some spoils of war where both of them can stuff their pockets or stuff their billionaires' pockets with the spoils of war? And make no doubt about it, Gary, in Iran, if this progresses the way we think it's going to progress, there is going to be a lot of spoils there. The country will not be the same country it is today. You look at Iraq, for example, when they were looking for the supposed weapons of mass destruction. You took a look at a picture. You took a look at a picture of Baghdad before, and you took a picture and take a look at the picture of Baghdad 10 years after the first bombs dropped. This place was absolutely desolate. It looked like Palestine. All right. So that is what I'm really afraid of for the Iranian people, of what potential freedom from the hell they were under may look like in 2, 3, 4 years. It's not going to be, this one is not going to be a surgical precision war by far. It will not be surgical.
But I don't. No, go ahead.
Yeah, Christian, go ahead.
No, I think but was it really that long-lasting plan? You hear all the time voices saying that the U.S. will run out of ammunition and bombs and whatever, which all the U.S. is built on bombs and ammunition faster than expected. When they keep on this pace, Iran, on the other hand, says we have endurance. It can last longer. We will fight back. You see now, there was no coordination with the UN nor with the NATO. Even Rutte today said, when he was specifically asked, did the US call you? Did they talk to you? Did you approve? Did you have a consensus on it? He was not saying yes, but also not no, and said whatever happens between NATO and US, he cannot disclose it. So Israel and in the US, they I think they didn't plan it for too long. But it's also interesting, like the impact it has also on the Ukrainian and Russian war. Like the whole game changes overnight. What does it mean for Russia? For Russia, now the money is flooding in because oil prices, gas prices going through the roof. A lot of countries need to divert now to Russia. On the other hand, like one of the biggest drone producers for Russia, which is Iran, is cut off. So it's
yeah.
but you see, there is a complete shift in the game. Whereas also what has been said is that the US now sends more ammunition, more armor, more military into Iran, which will leave a lack in the Ukraine. So you see, there is a total shift no one could really foresee, and we don't know where this all is going. The focus from Ukraine, Russia is now totally somewhere else.
Yeah.
So God knows where this goes.
Yeah, and then it's interesting you say that the American war machine, let's call it that. Gary, you think it's a good time to buy stocks in the American war industry in the United States at this particular time?
I'm sure there are a lot of people who are at the moment.
Exactly.
I heard many years ago, and I don't recall who made the statement, but it went something along the lines of, there's nothing any better for an economy than a war.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds really cold and brutal. But yeah, you start looking at companies that are involved in defense production and see what their stocks are doing over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So why does it all matter? As and this is just one component of democracy under stress. The war decisions test democratic accountability more than any other policy area. And if public scrutiny is minimized, as it has been, institutional trust erodes, and it is. And Eddie, you mentioned conspiracy theories a little while ago. This is the sort of thing that does lead to that kind of a discussion and people start coming up with conspiracy theories, unfortunately. But again, people are losing trust in government, and they know they're not getting the full story, if any part of the true story at all.
I was always against those conspiracy theories, but we have one really famous hedge fund manager in Germany called Florian Hamm, and he speaks about it openly. He was one of the most successful hedge fund managers in Germany over the 90s, 2000s. And he said, even like now he came out with I think a couple of weeks ago, even that they already discussed in 2018 or even earlier that Trump will eventually start a war in Iran. It is coming. So there are bets on all those kind of stuff. And he said, for people who think those are all conspiracy theories, if there's a theory, sometimes there's a little bit truth in it, especially if everything is pointing towards it. So yeah, I believe in that.
Good point.
It's like the old saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. So, that's where it sits. All right. Coming up, Alberta's multi-question referendum. And that's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
First, though, we hope you are enjoying our discussions on a variety of topics each week. We appreciate your support through comments, sharing, and subscribing. And if you would like to bump up your support, you can buy us a coffee. Simply click the code, which I forgot to hit that camera, and I can't get to it right now. Okay. As usual, check the link in the description below. Eddie and I, thank you. Why? For your support. Yeah, we really do. Thank you for your support. It does mean a lot, for sure. Okay.
Fact is, Alberta taxpayers can no longer be asked to continue to subsidize the entire country through equalization and federal transfers, permit the federal government to flood our borders with new arrivals, and then give free access to our most generous in the country social programs to anyone who moves here. This is not only grossly unfair to Alberta taxpayers, but also financially crippling and undercuts the quality of our healthcare, education, and other social services. The October 19th referendum will therefore include the following questions. Number 1. Do you support the government of Alberta taking increased control over immigration for the purpose of decreasing immigration to more sustainable levels, prioritizing economic migration, and ensuring Albertans have first priority to new employment opportunities? Number 2, do you support the government of Alberta introducing a law mandating only Canadian citizens, permanent residents, and individuals with an Alberta-approved immigration status will be eligible for provincially funded programs, such as health, education, and other social services? Number 3, assuming that all citizens and permanent residents continue to qualify for social support programs as they do now, do you support the government of Alberta introducing a law requiring all individuals with a non-permanent legal immigration status to be resident in Alberta for at least 12 months before qualifying for any provincially funded social support programs? Number 4, assuming that all citizens and permanent residents continue to qualify for public health care and education as they do now, do you support the government of Alberta charging a reasonable fee or premium to individuals with a non-permanent immigration status living in Alberta for their and their families' use of the healthcare and education systems? Number 5, do you support the government of Alberta introducing a law requiring individuals to provide proof of citizenship, such as a passport, birth certificate, or citizenship card, to be eligible to vote in a provincial election? To strengthen Alberta's constitutional and fiscal position within a united Canada, we will also be asking you the following questions on the referendum ballot. Do you support the government of Alberta proactively working with other willing provinces to amend the Canadian Constitution in the following ways? A, have provincial governments and not the federal government select the justices appointed to provincial King's Bench and appeals courts. B, abolish the unelected federal Senate. C, allow provinces to opt out of federal programs intruding on provincial jurisdictions such as health, education, and social services without losing any of the associated federal funding for use in their own provincial social programs. D, better protect provincial rights from federal interference by giving a province's laws dealing with provincial or shared constitutional areas of jurisdiction priority over federal laws when in conflict with one another.
Eddie, you're on mute.
My apologies, everyone.
You're
Last
taking a
month-
page out of my playbook.
Yeah. Well, it happens to the best of us. Eh? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, last month, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith raised the stakes in the efforts by some to force a referendum on separating from Canada. The debate raises fundamental questions about unity, leverage, and whether referendums serve as democratic expression or strategic bargaining tools.
And Eddie, I want to tell you, I reached out to the group behind the push for separation with an invitation to appear tonight. It was declined. I also reached out to the group known as Forever Canadian, and Thomas, who has appeared on our program in the past. He accepted the invitation, and I've been waiting for him to pop in, and I'll just keep an eye out. It's obviously something must have come up to delay him, or he may be having some technical difficulties. Anyway, if he pops in, we will get him on. But as I say, the group that is pushing for a separate Alberta now trying to gather about 177,000 signatures by May 2nd, declined. And the reason was, according to them, under Alberta election rules, They are not allowed to go out and educate the public on the referendum.
Wow. Gary, we don't
Now,
see you.
oh, sorry.
There we
My
go.
response to that was the fact that I didn't ask you to educate anyone. I just wanted to get your reaction to this last-minute play by Premier Smith with her 9-point referendum for October 19th. That's this fall. And also how their campaign is going. They seem to be buoyed by the fact that they're getting a lot of turnout when they have signature sessions around the province. And I guess they've even hit some of the few snowbirds that still go south to the U.S. as well. So, however, in the polling is telling a different story, and we'll get into that in a moment. A lot of political pundits have said that this whole referendum issue that Premier Smith brought out, she brought it out about 4 or 5 days before the provincial budget was tabled. And that provincial budget had a $9 billion deficit. And the suggestion was, well, this was to kind of flood the field and take some of the attention away and the heat off the budget and the deficit. And you notice leading up to this outline that we just had on, she had indicated that immigration and the immigration policy of the federal government, especially in the last 10 years, which would be the Trudeau era, a lot of the immigrants arrived in Alberta and they set up residence in Alberta, and it's put a real pressure point on providing services, education, and healthcare, for example. And that leads to some of the questions that she's outlined as far as controlling when somebody comes into the province and they're a temporary resident, putting some guardrails up around it. The other part of it, especially at the end where she's talking about an elected Senate, and I totally agree, or abolishing the Senate, and I totally agree with her. And, the appointment of provincial judges. It seems to me that why would you have Ottawa appointing judges when the provinces are quite capable of appointing their own provincial judges? And so on it goes. And again, kind of a preemptive strike to take a bit of the air out of the balloon of the separatists in Alberta. So that's kind of an overview. And I don't know. What I'm seeing, and I did a quick check on polling today, and as I said, the separatist group has been buoyed by the number of people turning out. They're getting large numbers of people turning out to sign. But when you look at the actual polling, there are some people who are looking at it as, yeah, I'll support separation if it sends a message to Ottawa and they're ready to sit down as a result and renegotiate a lot of things as far as Alberta's position in the Federation. They don't really want to separate. They just want to use this as ammunition for a discussion. Because, yeah, exactly. So that's where that sits right now as far as everything is concerned. But it brings us to a couple of things. You hit the nail right on the head, Eddie. Is this referendum binding or political leverage? No, it's not binding. Not by any stretch of the imagination. if they were successful. In same with Quebec. Any referendum here is not binding.
Correct.
There's a whole process that you have to go through, and it gets involved. It's spelled out in the Constitution, of which Quebec is not a signatory still, but it is spelled out in the Constitution as to what can happen and what cannot happen. The other thing is, this whole move and talk about separation in Alberta in particular, a little bit in Saskatchewan, we've had a group on from Saskatchewan on the program. Are citizens using blunt tools because institutional trust is low?
Yeah.
In my opinion, yes. They're going for the big bat because they feel that they have not been listened to. Their provincial politicians have not been listened to by Ottawa, and that they're getting a raw deal.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, when we had both Thomas and the representative from Saskatchewan on board, they both actually said that the feeling of the population is that they have not been listened to by Ottawa. And they want to ensure that their voices are heard, not just through federal elections, where by the time, as they mentioned, you get to Ontario, the election is pretty much over, which gives everybody else the feeling that nobody really cares what's going on out west. Both representatives from Alberta and Saskatchewan on our show clearly said, one pro separation, one anti-separation. They both clearly said, our constituents feel like they haven't been heard. How does the government and how does the province address that? So it's the same situation in Quebec. We're talking about 70s and 80s politics here, Gary, which is carried into today. Back in those days, Quebec was not heard. And you know what? Maybe some of our other provinces are feeling the neglect. Especially over the last, let's call it 15 years. To be honest, over the last 15 years, that provinces, for one reason or another, were just not listened to by Ottawa. Can that change? Both representatives on our show said, absolutely. But Ottawa's got to lead the way on how that change is going to happen, right? And, Prime Minister Carney's got his plate full with a whole lot of other things, basically keeping our country intact as a result of all this crap from our neighbors down south. He still has to address this issue about binding and tying our country together and getting closer relationship with the provincial administrations and recognizing the concerns of the citizens of these provinces. He can't put that by the wayside. He's got to attack that as well. You just can't ignore it.
No, and this time last year, and we, Prime Minister Carney had won the Liberal leadership, was it early March? I think it was early March, around this time. Mm-hmm. He, went on to win the Liberal leadership, and then become Prime Minister. And there was, because of the trade war at its peak, there was a lot of unity. If you recall, when he would hold the Council of the Federation, of course, at that point, Doug Ford was the chair of the Council of Federation, and he was like Captain Canada in his own right. And so there seemed to be a lot of unity right around the table with the premiers of the provinces and the territories, and a lot of very open discussion, and they all felt very good about the discussions they were having with the Prime Minister Carney at the time. Mm-hmm. And some things started moving forward, like a lot of the trade barriers came down, for example. And but over the last few months, it seems that has sort of eased. a degree, and so the heat's come down a bit, and some of the old frustrations are starting to really rise to the surface again, and of course, one of the first things, in Alberta, for example, it has been fueled by some of the comments from the Oval Office over the last 12 to 15 months, or even more, as far as the 51st state and be much better off and all of this kind of thing. And they've started that really seemed to propel them and give them some momentum to get out and start this whole situation. But again, the last poll I looked at, yes, the support was growing for separation, but then when you broke it down, about not quite half, about 47% said, yes, they support the referendum on separation, but only to be used for leverage. 33% were hardcore separatists. And as I say, now the political climate here in Quebec is starting to change. And yes, the Parti Québécois has won 4 straight by-elections, taking 4 seats from the CAQ. And the CAQ, for all intents and purposes, is done. But one of the key platform point for the Parti Québécois, of course, is separation.
Separation, yeah.
And if they do, we've been down this road before, and if it continues in Alberta, they're going to start seeing the same thing, and that centers around investment.
Yeah.
You're going to scare investors away, as happened in Quebec, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And the last time it really hurt because a lot of head offices moved out of Quebec or out of Montreal, and they went to Toronto. And then all of a sudden, Toronto was booming. It had surpassed Montreal as the largest city in the country, and continues to grow.
And the economic hub of our country, where it used to be right. Montreal, right?
Yeah. So, does all of this talk weaken our national cohesion? I think so. Do you?
Yeah, I think so too.
And as we're talking here, I'm just trying to catch up on some of these comments. So I'm paying attention and listening, but I'm trying to get some of the comments up here too. So,
well, that comes down to the question and the story. When you're looking at separatist movements, they are always trying to justify why a province would be better off alone than part of Canadian Confederation. What they'll do is they'll say why we shouldn't be part of Canadian Federation, but they don't necessarily communicate it. And I've seen it here, being a Montreal-born Quebecer. I have never seen the separatist movement speak about risk, Gary. Mm-hmm. Oh, you know what? We'll figure it out as we get there. They never communicate the potential risk to the citizens. And to me, that's clear misrepresentation. Inform the citizens of what the benefits are going to be, what the risks are if we do separate, and allow the citizen to make that kind of a decision, as opposed to, break out your pom-poms, everything's going to be just fine because we're going to be independent and we're going to have our own flag and we're going to have our own national anthem. Gary, we know that it goes way, way, way beyond that. And I don't know if Christian is listening, out in Europe, are there any provinces or any states out in any country in Europe that's, beside, and we know that in Spain there's a drive for the Catalan region to separate. What kind of communication actually gets conveyed to constituents out there on the risks of separating from a confederation? I know it doesn't happen in Canada the way I would like it to, and I'm just wondering if it's the same thing out in Europe, Christian.
Okay, now it works.
Oh, there you are.
Well, we're all sitting together in the European Union, and all the countries in Europe, they living from a big pot. There's sometimes little movements of separation. We had it, like, I think in the 90s, or even in Switzerland. I mean, it was a different referendum, but part of Switzerland wanted to go back into European Union, which, thanks God, was not taking place. But you hear it less, like we have maybe the same problems like here in Canada, but they are dealt differently because we're living under a big umbrella of the European Union. There's big money to be distributed to all the countries, and the countries who are is benefiting more than contributing to it, usually don't complain that much. Let's put it like this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Not really.
Okay. Well, Gary, let me ask you a question, and I think we kind of briefly discussed this in one of our international chats, side chats. So here we have Danielle Smith with a slew of referendum questions. Okay. The most obvious one when it comes to a referendum question, it has to be very clear. Do you want to separate from Canada? Yes or no? So the regular person, individual, would clearly understand that question. What does yes mean and what does no mean for myself as a citizen of Alberta? Do you really think that somebody's going to sit behind a polling station or a voting booth and read through every one of these questions before they get to the main one? Do you want to separate from Alberta or not? Now, I know we kind of joked around about this, and what are your thoughts on the length of these questions? And are these questions all going to be on the same ticket, on the same ballot, and expect to get a coherent answer on every one of these so Alberta can take a step forward in response to these referendum questions? Because that's a lot of talk, that's a lot of ink on a lot of paper. How do you think this is going to work out?
Well, I think definitely that all of those questions will be on the one ballot. October 19th is the day for the referendum, so they're going to be on the ballot. And I mean, we're no strangers now to lengthy ballots in elections. Just look at the last federal election in that, what was it, 7-foot-long ballot in Pierre Poilievre's old riding.
Yeah, and that was a protest ballot, though.
Yeah, but still, the mold has been broken, the precedent has been set.
True.
The problem I have with, the questioning is in plain wording, but you're right. A lot of people going in, unless they have studied these questions for a couple of days and given them thought before going in and marking their response on the ballot, they're going to walk in and all they're just going to see is just words. And at that point, they're in a hurry. They just want to get this done and get out, because they've probably already stood in line and had to go through all of the verification process. It takes up time. So there's a lot stuffed in there, and maybe it's by design to maybe she's looking for a certain outcome, and if you stuff each question with a lot of words, you're kind of pushing it in a certain direction. However, the Clarity Act states that the question must be clear and simple. One question, easily understood, clear and simple. Some of those questions, it's like the second and third question are kind of rolled in disguise to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And, when you're looking at a yes or a no answer, it can be interpreted a number of different ways. So, and she, when she talked about this, she also said that she believes Alberta belongs in a unified Canada. But we want to negotiate a better deal overall. And parts of these, part of the deal will include some segments, such as, the transfer or equalization payments, the appointing provincial judges, and in this one I have an issue with, taking the federal money for various programs, education and healthcare, but all Ottawa does is just cut the check and send it to the province, and the province does whatever it wants to do within those areas with that money, which is essentially what they're doing now. And going straight across this country, healthcare is in a mess. And you've heard me talk about it before. And as far as I'm concerned, it's time the federal government ponied up and showed some leadership and just pulled them all in and lay the law down. Mm-hmm. We are going to develop a national level of health care, and every province must meet that national level at a minimum. That's going to be your minimum, the national level of health care. So people moving back and forth across the country, and it happens a lot,
True.
can expect the same level of health care in British Columbia as what they're getting in Prince Edward Island. It's there.
Right.
And that's not the case now. And the provinces keep coming back and asking for more money to prop up health care. Where is the accountability? There's no accountability whatsoever. When you get right down to it, for the money that the feds are putting in, and there's really not a whole lot of accountability except at election time for each provincial government as to how they're spending that money. And all I ever see is new levels of bureaucracy popping up around healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
Totally against it. And somewhere along the way, you know what? Yeah, I understand the provinces wanting more control over their fate. That's great. But when you get into certain areas, and one of them is healthcare in particular, you haven't done a great job. You screwed up, basically. And you have no one to blame but yourselves. And in this case, I think the federal government should step in for the benefit of every person living and paying taxes in this country.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And I'll get off my soapbox because,
No, it's
I can get
you're
wound up on
absolutely
that one. I can really get wound up on that one. Okay, some people are having a lot of fun in the chat tonight. Okay. They do. They do to a degree, I should say. However, if you recall, it was a little over a year ago, before all hell started breaking loose for Trudeau, where he finally did a video that he put out on YouTube and said, yeah, we screwed up with immigration. I guess you did, because you opened up the doors and anybody got in.
Yeah, the barn doors were wide open.
Wide open, yeah.
Yeah.
No significant vetting of people. No, nothing. And there are a lot of those people who are still living in government-paid hotels.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Gary? I was discussing this with my wife today, and it's like, I believe in immigration if properly managed and properly controlled, because we're all paying our taxes, and there's only so much resources to handle so much of a population. You know what? When you're looking at the atrocities in the Ukraine, or if you remember Syria, the refugee situation with Syria. I believe it is the responsibility of the international community to do what they possibly can in terms of absorbing these individuals who've been pretty much running for their lives and got out of the country. And a lot of European nations stuck their hands out. They brought in Syrians, for example, Ukrainians, Canadians brought in a slew of Ukrainians and a lot of Syrians. And you know what? From time to time, I do run into these individuals in Montreal, in taxis, wherever. They are all contributing citizens, most of them, where very few are actually just sitting around collecting handouts and living the life. They realize they've been given a second chance and they are taking every opportunity with that second chance. So, you know what? Trudeau's policies in bringing in the Syrians and the Ukrainians, I was very proud to be a Canadian as a result of my prime minister's decision to open our arms and bring these poor people into our country, knowing they're going to contribute. Okay. What I have a problem with, and I think you have the same problem with that, is the damn doors were open completely, and anybody was walking in here. Not just the destitute out of war-torn countries of Ukraine and Syria that we were all familiar with. Anybody basically saying, "Oh, geez, you know what? Some guy threatened me, so now I'm going to claim refugee status," and in they come. That's the problem.
Yep. Well, Europe's a fine example. Christian, especially the UK, they have some serious issues for sure.
Definitely, and it's affecting all of the countries. Like the gates were open in Germany. It does not mean that we don't welcome immigrants, but it was uncontrolled. Yeah. And now we see the infrastructure is not built to keep this capacity. The capacity is not there to keep so many million people in. It's not that we're not welcoming people. Me personally, I live in Switzerland, and we don't have that big issue, but we see on the examples from the UK, from France, Germany, that we might run into this problem. And we started an initiative. I'm not sure if it's too early to discuss that yet, Gary, on your schedule, or okay, good. Sure.
Gary.
Sorry, that's coming up in the next segment in just a moment. So, all right, so let's wrap it up. And again, why it matters, what we've been talking about. Well, referendums can empower voters. You do feel empowered. You do feel that you're marking your X for a reason. However, frequent high-stake votes may normalize instability if the trust between governments is strained. And Quebec is a great example of that, Eddie. With the referendums in this province and the economic hit that it took.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're coming around again.
Yeah.
It's just, it just doesn't end. So, okay. Coming up, a country votes to cap its population. First, if you were getting ready to start a live stream, okay, then let me tell you about eCam. And my mouse has gone rogue on me again. Just a minute. There we go. Bingo. So, like I said, if you're getting ready to start a live stream or a YouTube channel, check out the software we use, eCam Live. It's a full production suite for Mac only. Click the affiliate link below for more details and a free 14-day trial. Okay.
And speaking of referendums, there is an interesting one coming up in Switzerland, a referendum on capping the country's population at 10 million.
And whether majority rule can create long-term structural consequences, Christian, what's driving the vote?
Well, several factors. I think we saw what's happening around in Europe. I mean, we're in the heart of Europe, Switzerland, surrounded by France, Italy, Austria, Germany. we're looking at those countries. We saw what happened over the years. We felt it ourselves. I mean, our borders are more closed than others. Reason being, we're not part of the European Union. We're still in the Schengen. But border controls are a little bit more controlling. Let's put it like this. In any case, like in Switzerland, we have a decentralized government and a direct democracy. So a lot of citizens were worried about that and how it works in Switzerland. If you have a feeling something needs to be changed, or you want to change a law or like have a referendum, you just simply go on the street, you collect 100,000 signatures for your initiative, and that happened over the last months. And this new initiative is called No 10 Million Switzerland. And this referendum is up for vote on the 14th of June. The key mechanics of this vote are that the population should be capped at 10 million by 2050. As a background, like we say, like if the population grows like this by 2040, we're already at 9.5 million. Currently, the population is around 8.9 million. For you to understand, we have a really small country. Like it's 200 by 300 kilometers. It's actually from here, from Montreal to Quebec, back and forth. That's it. And 75% of the country is mountains. So 70 to 75%. That means everyone lives on the 30% of the land, which is 9 to 10 million people shortly. So it raised some concerns. And the key mechanics of this initiatives are that the government will implement measures to immigration quotas, restrictions on family reunifications, as well as tighter asylum rules. So this is just a key factor in order to keep the constant growth of the population in a decent rate. Yeah, we know that Switzerland, the most part of the population growth is coming from immigration at the moment, rather than natural births. And the current trends continue. The country, as I said, would reach 40 or 10 million inhabitants by 2050. So given that, the referendum is held in June, and we see that 47% of all voters already saying yes, they want a cap at 10 million, with a lot of measurements hitting once the 9.5 million mark is reached. 41% are actually against it, and like the balance is at the moment undecided where that will go. And it's a big political debate at the moment, because we're still tied to the European Union. We have still laws in place which let Switzerland not be 100% independent from the European Union, because we're included in trade in so many aspects of life, which brings a risky referendum here. But if people will vote for it, it will be accepted. It will be accepted. Yeah.
Christian, I got a quick question for you. I'm not sure if you know or not. So, in terms of the immigration into Switzerland, what's the demographic of the people that want to or have been entering Switzerland? Is it from the European Union countries, or is it from abroad?
Mostly European Union, because the immigration rules for European Union people in the European Union is quite easy. I mean, for a Canadian to come to Switzerland, like they're implemented rules that if you, like for every, let's say like Switzerland has a strong partnership with the European Union. So for someone from the European Union to immigrate into Switzerland might be easier than someone from from another country like Canada or the US or whatever. Yeah.
I see. So it's an overall cap at 10 million. It doesn't focus on any area.
It is a cap at 10 million, but measurements would start applying at when we reach the 9.5 million. Yeah, which is expected by 2040. correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a lot of pros and a lot of cons, because we know that the Swiss economy is mainly driven by expats or by immigrants. Like this is Switzerland needs immigration in order to keep the economy running. But we're now at the point, and this is where you see the frustration within the population. It's getting really overcrowded. It's not that we don't want to take more people in, but the whole infrastructure is not built on hosting more people. Like I saw yesterday, I read an article. There is a 1-bedroom apartment in Zurich is now rented out at almost 3,000 Canadian, which is for 10 square meters. I don't know what much is in square foot, but basically you could barely even put a bed into the room, and that's it. Like housing
Wow.
prices going through the roof. The Swiss franc is getting really strong, but also costs are getting really, really high. We're one of the most expensive countries in Europe, and this drives it if more people are also coming into our country. Like it's not getting better on the housing market as well.
I see.
Well, that's essentially what happened with the Trudeau era immigration program, in the fact that drove our housing crisis.
Yes.
And we all know what happened there. Now it's turning around, because our population growth last year was 0, and it's projected at 0 again this year. And then the main reason is that Canadians aren't having families like we once did, number one. And number two, immigration has been cut back significantly.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, we're at a 0 limit. Housing has dropped in pricing. The markets have really tanked in most major centers across the country. The condo market in particular, especially in Toronto, has really taken a dive. And a lot of people who bought, yes, they had very low interest rates at the time, but they also got into bidding wars and overpaid. And now they're sitting there and they're having a tough time renewing their mortgages, because the value of the house has dropped way down. So again, it was like, let's open the doors and let them all come in, but we didn't have the infrastructure to handle it.
I mean, it will in our case, it will not restrict others. We will not stop immigration. We will just limit it. That's the thing. Like it will be a little bit more selective, and it will still trigger a big debate and negotiations with the European Union, because Switzerland we call it the guillotine clause. That means like the U.S. Switzerland bilateral agreements include a clause of free movement, of persons, and like if this one of those agreements in this the guillotine clause says if one of those agreements between the European Union and Switzerland is violated, then it terminates all other agreements in terms of trade, transport, research cooperation, defense, everything else. So it will be a big debate, but we have the feeling, even though it seems to be like 48-41 undecided, that this thing will go through, because like we cannot bear higher costs like anymore. Yeah, it's not possible. It's not possible anymore.
Gary, just quickly, my last question for the night. Do you think that, okay, fine, so we didn't have any population growth last year, we don't expect any this year, and with the government continuing to push a drop in basically closing the barn doors, do you think our infrastructure is ever going to catch up? That's all.
Well,
you'd like to think so, but
you would like to think so, but then as the demand, when you're talking in the ground infrastructure provided by municipalities and power and things like that, you know that they'll start cutting back on whatever expansion plans they have, upgrading plans, and those sorts of things. There does not seem to be a balance. If it is hit, it doesn't last very long.
Yeah.
So, and especially, well, the only thing is, Eddie, right now we have a major house building program underway by the federal government in conjunction with the provincial governments, affordable housing. I haven't seen a whole lot of projects though with shovels in the ground. Maybe I've missed the news releases. I don't know, but it's on the books. And then you have like even look around here. You know, we have that new 400 and some odd unit building across the street, and they started accepting people in before Christmas, and it's, you know, there are a few lights on here and there, but, you know, there's a lot of empty units over there that I think it's going to take them a while to fill, because now when you look at some of the ads, a lot of these new developments are running 2 months free rent, and they're offering like 6 months of free parking and all kinds of different incentives to come in. And that tells me that they're, you know, between the private investor buying a couple of condos in a condo building and the big development companies, they've saturated the market, and right now the demand is not there. So it's always a balancing act, and I don't know. Like, there's a couple of very interesting comments, and I just want to bring them up because they are like, I think they really kind of line up here. Where did we start? Right here. Okay. All right. Did that go out? There. Okay. Look at this one. 75% of Canada is completely uninhabitable. We've maximized every square inch. Canada only has enough infrastructure for 32 million people, not 44 million. And we're right around 40 million now, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, we speak about infrastructure. You're talking about hard infrastructure. What about the net? What about our social nets, right? I mean,
exactly.
Yeah.
Healthcare, education, social services. Just like Russia can't support more than 120 million, Canada can't support more than 30 to 35 million. Canada is, let me get it in here. There we go. Canada is an Arctic country with only one growing season. And
interesting
that reminds
tidbits.
me of the ad last year with Carney. Our soil is highly acidic, shallow, and the tundra constantly shifts. Building infrastructure on tundra is impossible. It's like building on a mudslide that freezes and constantly shifts.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing grows outside of what's been developed. We've maximized every inch of visible or viable farmland and ranch land. Canada needs more deportations. Okay, now we're going down a different road. Building infrastructure is extremely expensive and takes decades. Canada is broke. Arctic engineers have all left to work elsewhere. I wonder where they would go. And Arctic engineering is extremely difficult. Sorry, but Africans and Indians can't do it. No, because they have absolutely no
expertise.
No expertise in that kind of thing at all. So where would they be going?
Thanks for those contributions. That was interesting.
It was. And, you know, as you're reading down through it, making some sense overall for sure. So here, a couple of very quick questions, and we'll just take a very quick round. Can direct democracy produce restrictive outcomes?
Yes. We see it in Switzerland.
Yeah, you were telling me one night that every time you turn around, you're having a referendum, even at the local level.
Sorry, I had a bad line.
I said you were telling me the one night that every time you turn around in Switzerland, you have a referendum, even at the local level, for any kind of a decision.
Oh yeah, like there's direct democracy even on the municipality level. Like we're voting for everything. Like it was not a joke when I said like 2018, 19, when I moved to my new municipality, we were even voting for the color of our garbage bags, like in this in this municipality. So everything is voted, and when the people vote, then this will be directly like implemented. That's why we don't have like really one president. We don't have like we have like a decentralized government. There's 7 representatives who represent the people, not themselves, and they have to represent the decision of the Swiss people. They're just a representing organ to the outside of Switzerland. So it's direct democracy. If we want a new law, we're going to vote.
Gary, you know what? Out of the box thinking, maybe something this side of the world can learn from. I don't know. To me, it sounds rather appealing. And you're looking at what some of our provinces want to do is have greater autonomy, and the people want to be heard much more than they feel like they're being heard. Forget about being heard from Ottawa, being heard from
yourself.
From yourself. Yeah. You know what, Christian? I think we should put you on the programs of every major provincial media outlet, and you can talk to them about this wonderful idea that you guys are seems to be successfully running out there. I'm sure there are pitfalls, but
it is very successful in Switzerland. Like that's why we feel as people, we feel heard,
empowered.
We're powered. Like as the same with this Swiss referendum now in June. Like you get some signatures, you give it to the government, and then you're up for vote, and that's it. And if it goes through, if the majority votes for it, it's the law.
Yeah.
There's no way around. But you also have to see it from that perspective. We're 8.9 million people, not 40 million. We're voting every 3 months. Like you can do it in a small country. We're 200 by 300 kilometers. Like
Right.
Switzerland fits into Canada. Like I think I read over 120 times, like from the size of the country.
Mhm.
So this is a complete different approach. Like in Germany, it's different. Like it works for a small country. I'm not a politic expert, but I'm not sure if we could implement it to other countries. But we see that if you give the people the vote, Swiss people are really happy in general. It's not only the economy. Like you feel heard. You can change something. You have the feeling you can change, and we change. Yeah.
Interesting.
And that answers the question right there. So let's go back, because we have one more comment that we can squeeze in from the Republic of Alberta, W5P. Better to have too much direct democracy than not enough. Canadians have no say in anything.
I agree.
I think that that's a great way to wrap up the segment and the program. Sums it up.
There we go.
Yeah. So we'll try again.
All right.
Tonight we have looked at 3 scenarios, all challenging accountability or lack thereof, all putting democracy under pressure. It's being driven by a growing push to hold our governments to higher levels of accountability. No more controlled messaging or steadfast silence. It'll take leaders with courage to restore faith and trust in our elected institutions. Our democracy is more fragile today than at any point in recent memory. It's up to you as an individual to join in the effort to save our democracy. Remember, democracy may not be pretty at times. Think about countries like Iran, and you realize it's better than the alternative.
And that brings episode 73 to a close. Sorry Thomas couldn't join us today from the Forever Canadian group, and a special thanks for Christian for joining us tonight. Remember to like and share, subscribe on YouTube, and follow on Facebook. I'm Eddie Tekalik. Good night.
Night Talk returns in 7 days. I'm Gary MacDonald. Good night.